Welcome to Sip and Talk, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or, good evening, regardless of whatever time zone you are tuning in from right now.
Yes, welcome to the Sip and Talk studio, everybody.
I gotta say, walking into the studio today, the air just smells, I don't know, it smells like money and like that intensely sour feeling of an ex suddenly downgrading you to just a regular friend.
Oh, wow. That is a very specific, very aggressive vibe for today.
It really is. But honestly, look at the headlines. We just got handed a massive $40 billion, basically a friendship renewal bill, landing straight in Taipei. And at the exact same time, oil just violently gapped up to $116 a barrel.
Yeah, the global board is just being flipped over right in front of us.
Literally. So what are we actually looking at today?
Well, we are exploring a world that is rapidly shifting away from, comfortable diplomatic ambiguity. We are moving directly into an era of clear, undeniable confrontation. So our mission today is to really map out how this shift operates. We're going to look at the hard mechanics of transactional diplomacy, how this massive geopolitical premium is directly hitting your wallet, the harsh reality check sweeping the tech sector right now, and finally...
This is the crazy part.
Yeah, why putting our own biological brains on AI autopilot might actually be our single biggest vulnerability.
It's a massive lineup. And as always, Sip and Talkers, just a quick disclaimer before we get into the weeds here. While we are absolutely going to discuss market trends and, global shifts, we are not financial advisors.
Exactly. Not at all.
This is strictly an objective, factual exploration. We aren't taking any political sides. We're just looking at the nuts and bolts of how this new world actually operates.
A vital clarification. So where do we start?
Let's follow that $40 billion bill straight across the Pacific to Taipei. We have a U.S. congressional delegation that just touched down there, and they are very publicly pressuring the legislature to pass a currently deadlocked $40 billion defense budget.
$40 billion. That's astronomical.
Right? And Washington is explicitly warning that any delays are going to severely hurt the credibility of expedited weapon deliveries. And I want to make sure we differentiate this. This is entirely separate from that previous $14 billion arms sale we talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, this is the holistic, comprehensive defense budget.
Exactly. But $40 billion, I look at this and it feels like, paying cash to skip the line for limited edition sneakers.
The ultimate VIP pass.
Right, because you've got Poland in that line, you've got Ukraine in that line, the Middle East is in that line. Everyone wants access to the exact same highly saturated U.S. defense production lines. So my question is this actual strategic deterrence, or is this just a forced, hyper-expensive shopping spree that's going to completely crowd out their domestic tech and welfare budgets?
Well, that tension you just highlighted, that is the exact core of the issue. To understand the why here, we have to look at the mechanics of transactional diplomacy.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. So particularly the framework heavily utilized under Trump, transactional diplomacy moves away from those vague historical alliances. It replaces them with verifiable, ledger-based logic.
So it's all about the math.
Exactly. It's prioritizing asymmetric warfare. Think of asymmetric deterrence like a porcupine.
A porcupine?
Yeah. The porcupine doesn't need to be big enough to defeat a lion in a wrestling match. It just needs to be so completely covered in long, sharp spikes that the lion decides, the meal simply isn't worth a bleeding mouth.
Oh, I like that. Wait, so dropping $40 billion on defense is essentially Taiwan buying longer, sharper spikes, like mobile missile launchers instead of massive, expensive fighter jets.
Precisely. It proves a financial commitment to making the island just too costly to digest. But, to your second point, when a government commits that much capital to defense, the money has to be pulled from somewhere else.
Right, there's always a trade-off.
A brutal one. It forces an incredibly difficult internal debate. Funding that asymmetric deterrence means you might not be funding new domestic tech initiatives or infrastructure or healthcare programs. It is the ledger-based reality of security today.
Man, that $40 billion price tag isn't just buying weapons, it's buying a very hard boundary. But what happens when neighboring countries decide they don't even want to pretend to be friendly anymore?
The diplomatic unfollowing.
Exactly. We're seeing that exact boundary drawing happen diplomatically in Japan right now. They are getting ready to release their upcoming diplomatic blue book, which is basically their official foreign policy playbook, and they're officially downgrading their relationship with China.
A massive shift.
Yeah, they're changing the phrasing from one of the most important neighbors to simply an important neighbor.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, China just officially sanctioned a heavyweight Japanese lawmaker, Keiji Furuya, specifically for visiting Taipei. Now, I have to be honest here. One of the most important versus unimportant, it sounds like, high school drama, is changing a few translated words in a blue book really moving the needle, or is this just posturing?
I mean, it sounds subtle to the general public, but in diplomacy, words aren't just feelings. They are the literal load-bearing walls of trade agreements and security pacts.
So it's structurally significant.
Highly significant. When you change a word like that, you are knocking down a load-bearing wall. That subtle downgrade signals that the era of the strategic, mutually beneficial relationship is completely dead in the water. We are moving toward a zero-sum game.
So rapid regional camp formation.
Exactly. As the two largest economies in Asia publicly stop prioritizing cooperation, global corporations just hit the panic button. The de-risking of global supply chains accelerates exponentially.
Right. Everybody starts scrambling to build factories somewhere else.
Yeah. But the real immediate danger here is the total loss of buffer zones.
Meaning what? There's no relationship capital left to spend if something goes wrong on the water.
That is the exact threat. When nations view each other merely as an important neighbor rather than a vital partner, the threshold for conflict drops dramatically. It elevates the risk that a minor miscalculation in East Asian waters.
Like a bumped Coast Guard ship or something?
Exactly. A bumped ship, a misunderstood radar lock. It could rapidly spiral into a full-blown economic blockade simply because neither side has the political cover or, frankly, the desire to de-escalate.
And when those diplomatic buffer zones vanish entirely, geopolitical friction turns into actual kinetic fire, which brings us right to the energy markets.
The geopolitical premium in action.
Exactly. That premium is why Brent crude just gapped up 3% to $116.18 a barrel. That is the highest we've seen since the Russia-Ukraine outbreak back in 2022.
Yeah, the price action on the trading floor is just a direct reflection of the very real violence on the ground in the Middle East right now.
It is expanding so fast. I mean, the U.S.-Iran conflict is now in its 5th week. They're calling it Operation Epic Fury. We saw the assassination of Iranian naval commander Alireza Tangsiri.
Right.
And Iran didn't just absorb that hit. They retaliated with direct missile strikes on Kuwait and Bahrain. And they didn't just hit military outposts. They hit a civilian desalination plant and actually killed an Indian worker.
Which completely changes the scope of the conflict.
Completely. On top of that, the Houthis have officially joined the fray, attacking Israel and aggressively threatening the Red Sea shipping routes.
It is a massive multi-front expansion. And what is so fascinating, and honestly highly volatile, is the profound disconnect between the political narratives and the military reality on the ground.
Oh, you mean the back and forth about the peace plans?
Yes. You have Trump publicly claiming that Iran has essentially accepted most of his 15-point peace plan. He even stated that Iran allowed 20 U.S. oil ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz out of, quote, respect.
But if you look at Iran's official channels, they are broadcasting a completely different reality to the world.
A radically different one. Iran officially denies that any direct talks are even happening. In fact, they laid out 5 strict counterconditions, and one of those is the absolute demand for sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz.
Which is a complete non-starter for global maritime trade.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, the literal military footprint is expanding. The U.S. just deployed 3,500 troops to the region.
Wow.
Yeah, and defense analysts are suggesting they might be eyeing Kard Island, which is a critical Iranian oil export hub. Plus, we also saw the U.S. lose an E-3 Sentry AWACS plane in the theater.
And for any of our Sip&Talkers who don't know, an AWACS is a massive, highly advanced radar plane. That's a $300 million piece of hardware just lost in the conflict.
Exactly.
But let's bring this macro geopolitics back down to the listener's wallet. Look at Australia. The government there literally just announced they are having their fuel tax for the next 3 months just to combat this extreme energy inflation.
It's hitting everyone globally.
Yeah. Let me put it this way. It's like your neighbor's house is on fire. The fire hasn't actually reached your property yet, but you end up canceling your summer vacation anyway because the fire trucks are blocking your street and the cost of gas to drive away is suddenly astronomical.
That is a perfect analogy.
The conflict might be overseas, but it is burning a hole in your pocket right now.
And I'm glad you brought up the everyday economic impact, because that illustrates the concept of liquidity psychology in the financial markets. Right now, that psychology is fundamentally broken.
Which explains the stock market chaos.
Exactly. This is exactly why the NASDAQ 100 just hit a technical correction, dropping over 10%.
Hold on, let's break that mechanism down for a second. How does a missile strike in the Middle East literally crash a tech stock portfolio in Silicon Valley?
It all comes down to the mechanics of inflation and borrowing costs. When oil spikes to $116, every single physical good that is delivered on a truck, a train, or a ship gets more expensive.
Right, shipping costs go through the roof.
Right, and that bakes inflation deep into the economy. It makes it sticky. So the Federal Reserve looks at that sticky inflation and says, well, we cannot lower interest rates yet.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so all these tech companies that rely on borrowing cheap money to fund their massive growth in AI research projects, they suddenly find their corporate credit cards are maxed out with punishingly high interest rates.
Because the market had aggressively priced in those rate cuts.
Exactly. And when the war took those cuts off the table, the panic just tanked the NASDAQ.
That makes total sense. And that broader market anxiety brings us directly to the doorstep of the tech giants. The titans of Silicon Valley are suddenly waking up to the reality that in a wartime economy, raw computing power is the new strategic oil.
It is the ultimate bottleneck for future expansion.
The numbers here are just wild. On one hand, S&P 500 tech earnings growth is still ranking first overall. The underlying businesses are making money, but the sector itself is bleeding on the stock market.
The sentiment has completely shifted.
Yeah, I mean, look at NVIDIA, the absolute darling of the AI boom, and they are down about 10% year to date. Investors are finally looking past the shiny AI demos and demanding to see the actual ROI, the return on investment.
The honeymoon phase of blank check AI capital expenditure is officially over. The market wants to see how these models actually monetize before they keep funding these massive server farms.
And while they're scrambling to figure out monetization, the legal and regulatory reality is hitting them like a freight train. Meta just lost 2 incredibly damaging lawsuits.
Oh, share.
They got hit with a $6 million shared penalty in Los Angeles, specifically regarding teen addiction to their platforms. And even worse, a $375 million penalty in New Mexico regarding the failure to protect against child exploitation.
Which really proves that the whole move fast and break things era has immense delayed financial consequences.
Right. And you look at Apple, they are totally shifting their strategy to avoid getting trapped in all this. In the upcoming iOS 27, they are reportedly dropping their exclusive integration with OpenAI.
That's a huge pivot.
It really is. Instead, they're moving to an extension model where users can plug in Google's Gemini or Anthropic's Claude.
That is a massive architectural shift. By moving to an extension model, Apple is essentially acting like a web browser with interchangeable plugins.
Right, they're de-risking their tech stack.
Exactly. Yeah. They don't want to be locked into a single ecosystem and bear the risk of one AI provider failing, hallucinating, or facing regulatory shutdown. Meanwhile, Microsoft is just sitting there acting as the ultimate toll collector for enterprise AI. Perfectly positioned with Office 365 and Azure.
True, but the absolute craziest part of all this tech news has to be Elon Musk. He recently teased this concept of terafab.
Oh boy.
Yeah, a computational facility of a scale we can barely comprehend.
The physical infrastructure required for that is just staggering.
Staggering is an understatement. When the financial media actually ran the numbers on what terafab would require, they calculated it would take $6 trillion in capex.
$6 trillion.
Yeah. $6 trillion. To put that in perspective, that is nearly the entire annual budget of the United States government.
It's almost unimaginable.
And because of that impossible financial reality, Musk had to confirm that despite Tesla pushing forward with their own custom AI5 chip, both Tesla and SpaceX are going to continue buying NVIDIA chips at scale all the way through 2026.
Which perfectly illustrates the stranglehold NVIDIA currently has on the foundational layer of this new economy.
It's highly ironic, honestly. Everyone, Musk, Zuckerberg, Cook, they all want to build their own independent AI empires, but to build the empire, they still have to pull up to the NVIDIA toll booth and hand over billions of dollars in cash.
It's the ultimate pick and shovel business in a digital gold rush. But, you know, this desperate rush for infinite intelligence raises a much darker, much more personal question for all of us.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets incredibly real. We are pouring literally trillions of dollars into making artificial intelligence smarter, faster, and more capable. But according to a former OpenAI executive, Zach Cass, this exact process is actively making us human beings significantly dumber.
Yeah, he is warning about the concept of cognitive surrender.
Yes. Cass talks about cognitive surrender and what he calls identity displacement. The research behind this is genuinely terrifying. It suggests that when we constantly outsource our thinking, our logic, and our problem-solving to AI, we are physically altering our brains.
Rewiring ourselves.
Exactly. We are cutting our brain connectivity in half, which actively destroys our biological ability to build and retain long-term memory. I read this and immediately thought of the movie WALL-E.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. You know, where the humans have automated every single physical task, so they just float around in hover chairs, entirely helpless. Are we basically turning into the humans from WALL-E, but physically and mentally?
It is a profound analogy, and unfortunately, it is biologically accurate. This is what psychologists and neuroscientists are calling cognitive debt.
Cognitive debt?
Yeah, it is the direct result of intellectual labor outsourcing. Let's look at it through a financial lens. Just as a responsible investor needs to hold a 15% cash reserve to survive unexpected market dips, a human being needs to reserve at least 15% of their waking time to engage in purely manual, offline, difficult thinking.
Wait, what does purely manual, offline thinking actually look like in practice today? Because I feel like I'm always online.
Well, it means staring at a blank page and structuring a difficult email without asking an AI to draft it for you. It means navigating a complex problem using your own memory and logic, rather than instantly querying a chatbot for the summary.
Doing the hard work yourself.
Exactly. If you don't force those neural pathways to struggle through a problem, the brain quite literally prunes them to save energy. You lose the biological scaffolding required for complex thought.
Wow. So we're literally trading our internal intelligence for external convenience. That is a terrible trade.
It is a horrific trade. But there's a physical fix to this, and it ties beautifully back into our biology.
Okay, give me some good news.
The damage isn't just cognitive. It is physiological, stemming from the sedentary, screen-bound lifestyle that AI-augmented work demands. Health researchers are now strongly advocating for what they call exercise snacks.
I love the sound of an exercise snack, but I have a sinking feeling it does not involve potato chips.
Sadly, no. No chips involved. The physiological data shows that just 1 minute of high-intensity exercise, like dropping down and doing a minute of burpees or rapid squats.
Wait, burpees?
Yes, burpees. Done every single hour, it yields the mortality-reducing equivalent of 4 minutes of sustained moderate exercise.
1 minute of burpees every hour. How does that actually counteract staring at a screen all day?
It's all about breaking the metabolic cycle. It forces a massive surge in blood flow. It rapidly spikes your heart rate, and it actively breaks the cascading physiological damage of sitting still for 10 hours straight.
Wow.
Yeah, it acts as a biological reset button for both your body and your brain's connectivity.
A 1 minute burpee break to save your brain and your body. I mean, I can actually get behind that, even if my downstairs neighbors might absolutely hate me for it.
They'll get over it.
They will. Okay, Sip and Talkers, let's pull all of this together. We have covered massive ground today. We started by looking at a $40 billion defense budget in Taipei, analyzing how transactional diplomacy is buying highly lethal asymmetric boundaries.
Right.
We saw Japan officially downgrade its diplomatic relationship with China, proving that regional buffer zones are completely evaporating. We explored how the loss of those buffer zones is igniting oil prices to $116 a barrel, wrecking inflation expectations, and forcing the tech giants to realize that computing power is the strategic oil of a wartime economy.
A huge domino effect.
Exactly. And finally, we brought it right to your own head, looking at the very real danger of cognitive surrender and why you need to protect your neural pathways from AI atrophy.
It's a lot to process, but it's all connected.
If there is one cohesive thread running through all of this, it is that the world is decisively moving from an era of comfortable ambiguity into an era of clear confrontation. And in this new, highly polarized, highly automated environment, autonomy is your absolute most valuable asset.
Without a doubt.
Whether we are talking about national defense supply chains or your own independent critical thinking skills, protecting your autonomy is everything.
That is the ultimate takeaway here. Maintain your reserves, whether that is financial liquidity in a volatile market or
something to ponder while you do your hourly exercise snacks. Sip and Talkers, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Remember to protect your wallets in these crazy markets, and please protect your neural connections.
Yes, do the burpees.
Put the phone down and do some manual thinking today. If you enjoyed this conversation, please make sure to subscribe to Sip and Talk so you never miss a deep dive. And before we go, we have to give a massive shout out to our good friend Mickey. Head over to his YouTube channel, Mickey to Life.
It's an awesome channel.
It really is. He just dropped a brand new travel vlog that is absolutely incredible, and you do not want to miss it. All right, until next time, stay curious, stay sharp, and we'll talk to you soon.